This is their last shot before they need to go all in on Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and VJ Edgecombe as their future core. Watch, they're going to do everything that they're supposed to do. They're going to get the 1 seed, they're going to make the NBA Finals, and people are going to kill them for it because Tyrese Halliburton ain't out here. Jason Tatum ain't out here. Every year, we see a team kind of pole vault up the standings. I think this season, in the 2025-26 NBA season, that team is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip-hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip-hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast. It's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip-hop, you've come to the right place. They play my kind of basketball. A lot of layers to this song if you're really paying attention. Here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Welcome to another episode of Hip to the Games. Whether you are new to the H2DG family or a day one supporter, I appreciate you listening or watching today's show. All praise to the creative director, Jesus Christ, as it's always a blessing to get in front of this microphone and share what he's put in my heart with you. And a special shout out to the home team, 19 Media Group, for the opportunity to represent a network filled with passionate independent podcasters. If you consider yourself hip to the games and a part of the H2DG family, I would really appreciate it if you took a few seconds to give the show an honest rating and review on audio platforms like Apple Podcasts or Spotify so we can continue to grow the H2DG family. But for now, as we get closer and closer to Media Day and eventually the NBA preseason, I figured that I would share my preseason predictions for the NBA standings, okay? Now, I know the WNBA playoff picture is heating up, especially with the Las Vegas Aces finding a spark with this double-digit win streak that they've had lately. But admittedly, I just haven't been able to sit down and watch many of the games lately, and it pains me to say that. Like, this is the best time. We're getting to the best time of the WNBA season, and I have just feel like I've just been out the loop. So as much as I wanted to do that, I know there's been a bunch of hip-hop albums that drop. Everybody and their mama is dropping a hip-hop project lately, underground, mainstream, what have you, and it's a little overwhelming, man. And, you know, I never want to listen to an album and then just jump on here and talk about it for the sake of content. I really like to digest albums and really think about them and process them and enjoy them. So, you know, I didn't want to do those things because, again, it would have been inauthentic of me to just come on here and do those things for content when I've been a little bit out the loop. So I figured the safe thing to do this week would be to give my take on some of the preseason standings. And I think it's a little fun because it's very challenging, right? I'm fully aware that this is a daunting task because we never truly know how a season is going to shape up. And I know I'm bound to upset some fan bases in the process. I know I'm bound to probably get a couple raised eyebrows with some of my selections. But that said, I'm down to take on the challenge. All right, you're going to get it all H2DG style. So I will be sharing my thoughts on the standings for each conference, 1 through 15, and then discussing the reasoning behind my predictions. Even though the East is generally seen as the weaker conference, I still believe that because of the wide open nature of the conference, it's still going to very much so be an entertaining season out East. It's going to be awesome to see how things shape up. So I actually want to start with the East, and then we'll eventually get into the Western Conference standings later on. So getting right into it, my Eastern Conference standings predictions are as follows, okay? As of literally at the time of this recording, 1:59 Central Time, okay, on September 1st. These are my East standings. All right, going from the bottom up, we got the Brooklyn Nets at 15, the Washington Wizards at 14, my Chicago Bulls at number 13, the Charlotte Hornets at number 12, the Toronto Raptors at number 11, the Indiana Pacers at number 10, the Philadelphia 76ers at number 9, the Miami Heat at number 8, the Milwaukee Bucks at number 7, the Boston Celtics at number 6, the Detroit Pistons at number 5, the Atlanta Hawks at number 4, the Orlando Magic at number 3, the Cleveland Cavaliers at number 2, and of course the New York Knicks at number 1. Okay, so there's a lot I want to get into. Okay, so obviously we can start at the bottom. Okay, Brooklyn Nets. dead last in the conference. 33% of their roster is made up of rookies. Okay. They got 5 rookies in this draft class alone. And their longest tenured players are Nick Claxton, Michael Porter Jr., and Terrence Mann. Okay. So this is a group of some young puppies right here. You don't really expect the Brooklyn Nets to do a lot this year. I think it's pretty obvious that they're going to be last, in my opinion. And even bringing up the longest tenured players, right? I think when you look at even Nick Claxton, Michael Porter Jr., Terrence Mann, sure, is there some veteran-esque experience in there, right? Yes, have those guys been to the playoffs? Michael Porter Jr., he is an NBA champion. That said, I once heard both on separate occasions, actually, I once heard both JJ Redick and Miles Turner state that NBA players are considered veterans once they hit 10 years. So in that case, these guys aren't even really vets, right? They're big bros, as I call them. So the Nets are extremely young. It's a lot of raw talent in there. Admittedly, there were times you turned on some of their games last season and you were just like, I don't know who's out there. And not even in a disrespectful sense, right? It's just like, and as I always say, with all these contracts in the NBA now, so many guys getting called up, two-way deals, people, teams tanking for the draft, like it was a lot of movement going around. And so the Brooklyn Nets, I think it's pretty obvious they're going to be towards that bottom end. I will say though, they do have some interesting pieces. I do like some of those rookies that they got. I do like Danny Wolf. I do like Yegor Demon at the point. I like that as a bigger guard. But my thing, man, is this Cam Thomas, Michael Porter Jr. duo, man. I just think those two brothers are too much alike mentality wise. And it's not necessarily a diss, right? Like obviously Cam Thomas, like these are the cards that he was dealt with, right? Like it's hard to be the scorer that he knows he can be and do it on a team like Brooklyn, who is not going to win a lot of games. It's very easy. I think it's been very easy for him to be the butt of every joke. People, label him as a shot chucker and somebody that, only is going to give buckets. He's not going to impact the game in other ways, which again, understandable, right? But again, these are things he's going to learn as he gets more experience, as he stays healthy and just the Brooklyn Nets continue to build around that group. I'm sure there are going to be small moments where they have their flashes, especially as they stay healthy. I know Michael Porter Jr., I just saw the clip of him working out with Trae Young. I know he's excited to have this kind of role and is pushing for an all-star appearance for himself, a big goal for him. So again, there's going to be flashes, but the Brooklyn Nets ain't going to do that much this year. Very young team. They're continuing to build what they got. Next up at 14, we got the Washington Wizards. It's almost crazy to put them this low, right? Obviously, like you kind of expect that because again, this is another team that's young with a lot of raw talent, a lot of raw talent. That was the first thing I wrote on my notes here when I was thinking about the Washington Wizards. Young talent everywhere. I mean, they just got Cam Whitmore, but they've got Alex Sarr, right? They got Keyshawn George, who a lot of people like, right? As a bigger kind of, I think he can play sometimes. I think he can kind of play guard and forward with his size and skill set. I love Bub Carrington. I love his mid-range game to show what he's got so young. I love that. It looks very polished. It's not something that I felt was like raw per se. Some guys, I always say it's easy to come into the league and they want to show their mid-range game and they want to take all the contested shots and do all these things. Bub to me was very efficient and really confident stepping into his mid-range shot. So I'm excited to see how he continues to grow and then learn from the vets who are some of the better who've been some of the better mid-range scorers, when they were in their primes, CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton. But again, looking at that roster, even AJ Johnson, again, he showed a lot of flashes. I mean, they got a lot of pieces over there, man. They got a lot of pieces, and I think it's exciting. Like I think they are going to be ascending gradually. If you pay attention to the Washington Wizards, I think we're going to get a bit of a clear picture year by year what their future can look like. Again, similar to how I feel about the Nets, but in a more confident way. I think they'll have a lot of competitive moments this year. But again, I think this is going to be one of those seasons where they learn as much as they can from CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, and before truly letting those guys maybe find different roles with contenders or what have you, and then letting these young guys get loose and go wild and build their experience and things of that nature. So again, a very low key league pass team is the Washington Wizards. I really think so. I really think so. Like I said, young talent everywhere. I think it's just all about how it's going to mesh. At 13, we got my Chicago Bulls. As a Bulls fan, okay, and I've said this before, I have completely taken myself out of the GM, the front office situation. Okay, I am not even paying attention to that. Like the Bulls are gonna Bulls at this point, you know. So I just want to focus on what we're seeing on court. And honestly, what I'm very excited for is the development of Montes Buzelis. If he really takes a leap, the pressure will be on for the Chicago Bulls to build around him, which may not be smooth sailing given the way they've handled the roster the last couple seasons. But I think this is the year where we really look at Montes Buzelis and say, is this dude going to be the cornerstone we think he can be? Right. And I think, again, the Bulls have some decisions to make. If I am touching on the front office stuff, they do have some decisions to make. Like, is Kobe White a part of our long-term plans? Shoot, is Io DeSumo a part of our long-term plans? What are we going to do with Patrick Williams? What are we going to do with Nikola Vucevic? I think it's a lot of those situations because we got a lot of. I think the Bulls have a lot of tradable pieces. If I'm labeling anybody as untouchable on the Chicago Bulls roster, it's Montes Buzelis, it's Kobe White, and to me, it's Josh Giddey. Like, I don't understand why the Chicago Bulls haven't paid that man yet at the time of this recording. I have no idea why they haven't paid this man. Like, I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, I think they fear he had a little bit of a insanity type of deal, right? Where he was getting the triple doubles. He had the crazy game winner versus the Los Angeles Lakers. And people don't think it's legit. Like, can he do it for a full season? Right. We know about his defensive flaws, which he did kind of improve on as the season progressed. He took it upon himself to take that challenge and get better defensively by experience, right? Throwing himself out in situations that, you know, you once, I guess he once kind of shied away from and didn't succeed in. But, you know, I think the Bulls have to pay that brother, man. Like, at the end of the day, I understand things of the whole second apron thing, and now we're at this point where we're scared to pay players because it might do good for us on court now, but later, are we going to be able to keep our roster and keep these guys? Are we going to have to trade these people away because we're going to be over the second apron, right? Like, I understand that, but at the end of the day, man, I get it. Yes, it's a business. I am not denying that at all. But at the end of the day, what are we going to do on this basketball court? This is a basketball game. Can we keep the game in its pure environment? Can we keep it at its natural state, man, and think about the game? And if we thinking about the game, Josh Giddey he was hooping for us. He was hooping, and he is everything. I knew it the minute we traded for him. I said that Josh Giddey trade told me exactly that Lonzo Ball was going to be dealt at some point, and lo and behold, he was. Because Josh Giddey fits the open court style that we're starting to play. Montes Buzelis fits the open court style that we're starting to play. Kobe White can fit that style as well, but also be our half court bucket getter. So I just say all that to say, you know, the Bulls, they're not going to do as well this year. I know we had that stretch towards the end of the last season where there was a little bit of a window of us getting in the play-in, but, you know, I just don't see us doing that for a full season. Obviously, the first chunk of that season, we still had Zach LaVine. So, you know, we had our all-star caliber player that was helping us win and things of that nature. But without that for a whole season, I just don't see the Bulls being that competitive unless, you know, somehow, some way we do it again and somehow we're in the play-in. Like, but I just don't see that. I think if we just keep what we got for the most part, let these young guys loose, see what Montes does in year two, and then, you know, hopefully get another high draft pick and just keep building. I think that should be where the Bulls are at right now. But then moving forward at the 12th spot in the East for me is the Charlotte Hornets. Despite some improvements to their roster throughout the draft, you know, through free agency, again, I have them so low because I don't know if LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller can lead this team to the playoffs. Like that if I'm giving them a challenge, that's my challenge. Like, again, challenges are supposed to be a little big picture, sometimes a little delusional, right? They help you muster up that inner confidence, that inner belief, and those inner traits that you don't even know you have to do great things. That if I'm doing that with the Charlotte Hornets, I'm telling those two guys to lead them to the playoffs. But again, that's been hard because LaMelo Ball has not been healthy. Brandon Miller, you know, he had the injury last year. So their two best players have to be healthy if they're going to be higher than 12th. their two best players have to be healthy. Because I said it in the offseason awards episode. I love what they did through the draft. I love all the guys that they got. I love Con Kneppel. I love them getting Ryan Kalkbrenner. I love them getting, let me see. Yes, Liam McNeely. Like, he was doing good in the summer league. Like, I think they did a great job of getting glue pieces, right? Rotational pieces, some versatility pieces to supplement the star power that they have in guys like LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, right? We know Miles Bridges is still playing his role very well. Grant Williams is going to be back from injury. Trey Mann is still out there. They got Colin Sexton. They got Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, low key, the Charlotte Hornets, in some ways, if they're healthy, there is no way they shouldn't be a play-in team at the very least. But the thing is, are they going to stay healthy? Are they still young? Are they still immature? What kind of basketball are they going to play? What is Charles Lee going to do with this team? How are the acquisitions of Colin Sexton and Spencer Dinwiddie going to help some of those younger guards with their experience, right? How are they going to give an energy boost? How do they seek to contribute with, again, a lot of scores, if you're paying attention, a lot of scores on this team, and that can be a little hard when you have a lot of scores. So, yeah, I think it's interesting where the Hornets are at. I've been somebody the past few seasons where I kept saying LaMelo Ball can get these guys back to the play-in. LaMelo Ball can get these guys back to the play-in, and it just hasn't happened. Hopefully, this year is that year, but as of right now, I got to put them 12th because I just don't see how the pieces are fully going to connect yet. I think they've made some strides. They've made some strides, but again, folks got to be healthy, and we got to see how it fits. Because if they're playing, again, even LaMelo Ball, I know a lot of us pick on him because he has a lot of that street game. He has a lot of that Drew League game. He's a great player, talented player. But when is it going to click for him that there's winning basketball and then there's entertainment? And when he decides to bridge both is when the Hornets are going to be successful. But again, once he does that and they stay healthy, then I think I'll be more confident in the Hornets. But right now I got them bottom of the pack. That brings us to the 11th seed where I have the Toronto Raptors sitting. And that might surprise you. I feel like the Raptors are one of the more slept on teams in the East. I really do. Contrary to many, I really like this team on paper. I think so many people are worried about the coexisting of Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram, yet they don't realize how much their play styles actually do coexist. Because the way I see it is this, right? I think Scotty Barnes did a great job developing his mid-range game. I think Scotty Barnes does a great job in the mid-post. That was something that I didn't know he had until he gradually developed it. And so you look at Brandon Ingram and he likes the ball in the exact same spots. Like, Brandon Ingram is that old school, I want the ball in the T-Mac area as much as possible. Let me get my buckets and surround me with the right pieces. And I do think the Raptors have that. I don't see a lot of congestion. And I think the biggest key with the Toronto Raptors is this. If you're going to put Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram on the floor at the same time, Scotty Barnes needs to sacrifice some of his mid-post game, and he needs to thrive in the open court. I really think that's how this duo is going to have to work. Let Brandon Ingram get those mid-post buckets because that's what he does. Scotty Barnes is he reminds me so much of Draymond, Andre Iguodala, somebody that is a Swiss Army knife, can guard multiple positions. And when you watch Scotty Barnes, he loves pushing the pace. He loves pushing the break. So I think in that regard, you have to have that, right? For every Michael Jordan, you need a Scottie Pippen. You can't have two Jordans and you can't have two Pippens. Somebody's got to get the buckets. Somebody's got to be the facilitator. Somebody's got to be the one to slow the game down. Somebody's got to be the one to push the tempo, right? So I think that's the thing that the Raptors have that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. Obviously, yes, Brandon Ingram's health he's another guy where his health is extremely key. He has not been the healthiest brother on the floor, but I do think the pieces are there. It's probably not going to be playoff eligible. Probably, again, as I have it, right outside the play-in. But I really like what those guys have on paper. I love Jakob Poeltl. He had a really good year last year. He pretty much had a career year last year when you think about it. Like I said, Scotty Barnes has grown as a scorer. I think RJ Barrett has grown as a player. Playing for his hometown team, he's found a home there, really, right? Like, or I should say, he's back home, right? He's back with home cooking, and that's always going to do a player good. And I know he has his flaws. I know he isn't a perfect player, but shoot, this is a guy that can get you 25 and 5. It's another guy that can balance out the offense. It's another guy that can get to the rim. It's another guy that can shoot threes. It's another guy that can push the pace and make plays for himself and others. I think, again, that's the NBA that we're in now, having multiple guys that can make plays for themselves and others. And RJ Barrett fits that. Emmanuel quickly fits that. I think Grady Dick isn't shot. Grady Dick came into the league and I thought he was just a shooter. Right. I don't know what the general consensus of his game was, but for me, I thought he was just a shooter, but he's not shy getting to the rim. He's not afraid to put the ball on the floor. And I love that about this team. They just drafted Colin Murray Boyles, who, again, I think in some ways, when you think of him and Scotty Barnes, just like I said, how the Warriors had Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala, I think big picture, right, North Star, that's what Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray Boyle should aspire to be like, where it's like, hey, we got two dudes that can be versatile defenders and just make the right plays on the basketball floor to help us win games. We make winning plays, and having two guys like that on one team can be dangerous. Even Jamal Shed, right? This is a point guard. I've only seen flashes of him, but I thought he did he made a lot of positive production in the minutes that he was getting in Toronto. And I mean, you look at Ochai Agbaji, like they got a lot of guys who, again, high energy guys that want to win and make winning plays. Again, it's just about that cohesion. You're going to hear me say that word a lot with a lot of these situations today, because I really think some of it is that simple. Obviously not easy, but it is that simple. You just got to take that time to gel with each other and see how it goes. Like I said, maybe the Raptors are just maybe one piece away, or maybe another trade away. Who knows? But I really like what they have on paper. There is potential there, but everybody's got to stay healthy. And Coach Darko, he's got to figure out how he wants to work a lot of these skill sets that he has, how he wants to put it on the floor. Does he want it all on the floor at the same time? Does he want to overload, or does he want to have some guys sacrifice going to the bench? I'm anxious to see what he does. But I think, again, I named a lot of guys. I think they have a solid 8, 9, maybe even 10-man rotation that they can use. All right, and then we're into the play-in spots for the Eastern Conference now. And I really want to take this moment to kind of jumble the Indiana Pacers, the 76ers, and the Miami Heat, right? So 10, 9, 8 spots here. Now, I see all three of these teams in the same boat. Bottom-seeded sleepers. I think people are really sleeping on how good the Pacers can be even without Tyrese Halliburton, right? I'm seeing a lot of people just gloss over the Pacers because they won't have Tyrese. And I've been saying it for years. Indiana is the NBA's land of opportunity. There is just something about that franchise that makes them produce revival. Remember, we said the same things about the 2018 Pacers after they traded Paul George. Suddenly, they became a top 5 team in the East. This is Victor Oladipo taking a leap, right? This is Domantas Sabonis taking a leap. And they had Doug McDermott, if I'm not mistaken. They had Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, I think they had Darren Collison even, right? Like, on paper, it just didn't seem like that would be a top 5 team in the East. But again, they just made it work because they played team basketball, and they had somebody like Victor Oladipo, an all-star caliber player who knew how to get his, right? Low key, the Pacers still have that. Pascal Siakam knows how to get his. I think Andrew Nembhard, I think we're really sleeping on the opportunity that he has this year to have bigger production in a bigger role. Everybody was on their timeline saying, oh, Andrew Nembhard, if only he had his own team, what would he be doing? If Andrew Nembhard was starting somewhere like Orlando, he'd probably be an all-star. Andrew Nembhard this, Andrew Nembhard that. Now I feel like Tyrese Halliburton's out, and people are like, oh, the Pacers, yeah, they ain't going to do nothing. We looking at next season. We not even looking at 25, 26. We looking at 26, 27. And understandable, right? Obviously, you want to wait till Tyrese gets back to really go full gear, but I wouldn't sleep on this team. I would consider the Indiana Pacers a good basketball team still. Like I said, Andrew Nembhard's got a great opportunity to do more of what we've seen flashes of in the past. I think Ben Mathurin, it just came out. Shout out Caitlin Cooper, who does great work with Basketball She Wrote, her blog, but also her podcast where she covers all the ins and outs of the Pacers offense and all the X's and O's, all that nerdy stuff that we like, that's my dream, to be able to talk the game the way she does, man. But, she had Rick Carlisle on her show, and he gave her the exclusive and said, I'm starting Ben Mathurin this year. And you could see it on his face, right? He knows that that's a bit of a risk, in the sense of like, hey, this is what we expect out of him, but we also know his flaws, and this is his chance to step up to the plate. And so I think, again, you got two guys with a chip on their shoulder this year, and Andrew Nembhard and Ben Mathurin, who are going to be starting for this team along with Pascal Siakam. If they can do some things this year, man, I would not be surprised if this team, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if they made the play-in, but I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think I'd be surprised if they made the playoffs. I still think they are that good. They got that much grit about them. And even this, right? Yes, they lost Miles Turner. And I'm not saying that this guy is going to start. Who knows, right? I think, again, when we think about cohesiveness and chemistry, I do think Obi Toppin is just really good as a bench, as a second unit spark plug, right? So if Rick Carlisle really wants to go that route, and Rick Carlisle loves him some stretch bigs, I do think Jay Huff has a chance of being in those most improved conversations. I know it sounds crazy, right? But that's all it takes. Again, what I always say every year, and I could be wrong, all right? I could be wrong. I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is just me speaking boldly. I do think Jay Huff can be in most improved conversations. Not to say he'll even be a finalist, but I think he'll be in those conversations with the opportunity he's going to get. With Indiana being the land of NBA opportunity, I think he can do it. He just came off a 40% three-point shooting season, and then he almost averaged 3 blocks a game per 36 minutes. And then I saw a stat from Crafted NBA on Twitter that detailed that Jay Huff is the second most similar player to Miles Turner, right behind Chet Holmgren. So the stats say that the Pacers quite literally got their Miles Turner replacement in Jay Huff. That's all I'm saying. We should not be surprised if he finds a way with the team basketball that they play, the I don't care who eats basketball that they play. I would not be surprised if Jay Huff finds a home with this team. He reminds me so much of Ryan Anderson back in the day. If Ryan Anderson was a shot blocker, I think that's Jay Huff. I may have them 10th, but like I said, I think that's worst case scenario. Don't sleep on the Indiana Pacers. As for Philly, I'm a little scared for this team. I'm not going to lie. I'm rooting for my guy PG to get healthy and everything, and stay healthy, and, get that mojo back in his step and everything. But I am scared for this team. I can't even hold you. That is the reason why they're ninth. Because to me, this team can either be ninth in the Eastern Conference or fourth. It's all dependent on health, and it's all dependent on how their stars show up. And I went with the safer pick, and I put them ninth. And again, I know people might look at me crazy when I say that, but because, like I said, listen to what I just said. I do believe that on paper, this team can be a 4th, 5th, 6th seed in the East. But if we're going off the trends that we've been seeing, I don't know. I don't know if I'm that confident in that. This is their last shot before they need to go all in on Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and VJ Edgecombe as their future core. Tyrese Maxey is as dynamic as they come, but I think, again, with a guy like him who's not necessarily a passer, right? He's more of a score first kind of guy. I think having somebody like Jared McCain opposite of him, somebody who can also do those things, who can score, who can shoot, but likes making plays for others as well, I think it's good. That's a good dynamic to have. Earlier in the season, I compared them to potentially becoming like a John Wall, Bradley Beal-esque duo. I think they can bring that kind of electricity to this team. And I think even specifically Jared McCain, in a perfect world, again, I know people tend to trip when I say comparisons because I tend to be a very optimistic person, and the names that I draw are very North Star, like reach for the sky type, energy. But I do feel this way authentically. Like Jared McCain, to me, when I watch him play, he is Klay Thompson with Steph Curry tendencies. Right? I know I'm sure Klay Thompson wishes that he could move as quick as Steph Curry. Right. And I'm sure Steph Curry sometimes wishes that he could score 60 in 3 dribbles. Right. I think Jared McCain really meshes both of those guys' tendencies. I think his off-ball relocation ability is very reminiscent of Steph. I mean, you can tell he studied the mess out of Steph Curry. When he gives up the ball, he's going to a spot. That dude does not stand still. His sharpness, his instincts, his attention to detail, I think, is already veteran-esque. When you listen to his interviews and the way he talks about his technique and his studying and his mindfulness, right? Like, he really cares about his craft, and that scares me because he's so young. I see a lot of those same things with him. Again, he's not going to hit you off the dribble like Steph. That's where the Klay Thompson thing comes in, but I think he can. I think he can blend both of those players for sure, for sure. And I think even for VJ Edgecombe, I think he is the explosive slasher that they needed to balance out some of those guys that can score on this team. And I think he can be that slasher that we expect him to become. You know, he reminds me so much of a young D Wade, in that sense. Just the way he carries himself and just how he's already a stronger slasher at a young age. I think there's some similarities there. And I think when you look at this roster, they did bring a lot of guys back. You know, I was actually surprised at that. They brought back Andre Drummond. They brought back Eric Gordon, I'm pretty sure. Kyle Lowry, I think, even opted in, right? So a lot of guys came back. Kelly Oubre, I think, opted in. So I think a lot of these guys see this, right? Like, okay, let's run it back for one more season and see how we do. Because on paper, they can be very good. But it's the health and the production of Joel Embiid and Paul George specifically. To me, like I said, that is the difference between them being a 3 to 5 seed or a play-in team. Like, I don't think Joel Embiid, like I've been saying, he put his body through the ringer. He loves doing all that Carmelo Anthony stuff at 7 foot 270 or whatever he is, you know, instead of getting his butt in the paint and dominating the paint. He loves blending all of his skills, and that's why he's so great. That's what has made him so great. And he's had 3 straight seasons scoring 30 points per game, but I think all of that really caught up to him. And even now, like, I don't know if there's been much update on how he's doing. You know, you hear a lot of rumors that his knee is just shot and it's not the same and all of these things. Paul George, like I said, it's crazy. He had, I believe he hyperextended his left knee with the Clippers a couple seasons ago. Then he hyperextended that knee twice in a matter of weeks this past season, and then now you're seeing it again in an off-season workout. He had a very similar injury to the left knee, so that left knee is just really eating at Paul George right now, and I just don't know how healthy these guys are going to fare for a whole season. And I think at some point, you know, that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to have to make some decisions with a lot of these guys and then shift their focus towards Maxey, McCain, and VJ. I really think that's that's probably what we're going to see in the near future. But again, I'm rooting for Joel Embiid to be healthy. Of course, Paul George is one of my favorites still to this day. I'm rooting for him to be healthy and that they can prove me wrong and they can be a playoff threat and have a much better season than last year and really kind of blend their half old head, half young and roster that they have. You know, I really hope for the best, but I think I just settle for them at play in right now. We'll see as the season goes how healthy they can be and what it looks like. But right now, I just wanted to play it safe and put them in the play in. And then similarly, Miami is an interesting team, right? They have all-star players in Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. And I think getting Norman Powell via trade was a huge pickup for them. I love that Davion Mitchell has seemed to find a home here. I think they love him over there. He loves playing for the Heat. He gave great energy in the playoffs and the play-in game and whatnot. Andrew Wiggins is still there. You know, they got some good pieces. We'll see what Kel Ware is going to do this year. You know, Eric Spoelstra, Coach Spo been on his tail this summer, you know, saying like he's got to be better. We want him to do this. We want him to do that. You know, they're demanding that Heat culture excellence out of him. So we'll see how he responds. You know, I think they got to shore up some of the point guard stuff. I know they drafted the one from Illinois. I'm brain farting on his name, but they drafted the kid from Illinois. I think he can be really good for them if he gets an opportunity. You know, we'll see what they do with Terry Rozier and if they can kind of trade and flip him for something, you know, I don't know. But they got some pieces. They should definitely be in the play-in conversation as well. Again, I don't expect anything too great from them, but they're going to be in the play-in conversation for sure, for sure. All right, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the actual playoff spots, right? So now the 7th spot, right? Again, this is the final play-in spot, but we're going to get closer to the playoff seeding, and I think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be right there at the 7th spot. And the reason why I have them here is because we know what we're going to get from Giannis, right? We know that they did a good job stealing Miles Turner after they lost Brook Lopez. Gary Trent got a well-deserved bag. They got some pieces. But I got to be honest, I think that we are due to see some boo-boo basketball from the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. Again, I think it's going to be a little ugly out here. The only reason I have them in the 7th spot, this is just 7th. The only reason I have them 7th is because Giannis is Superman. That boy Giannis is insane. He can single-handedly carry a team to a playoff spot. But what about everybody else? Like, that's literally when I look at this team, I'm like, what about everybody else? We know what Giannis is going to do, but what the heck is this? Right? Who else is going to have the rock? And now you don't have the all-star in Damian Lillard anymore. So, while I like what Kevin Porter Jr. did with this team, he's going to have a bigger role. He's going to have bigger responsibility. What is that going to look like? Cole Anthony, he's going to be playing with an even bigger chip on his shoulder because he's, kind of been slept on now, right? Despite starting his career with really good production. What version of Kyle Kuzma are we going to get? This dude just a few seasons ago was averaging 20 points a game. Now he's back 15, 14 points, just kind of chilling, similar to how, I think it's a little bit similar to what he was doing with the Lakers. I just think we never know what kind of Kuz we're going to get. So, I keep looking back at how they played without Dame in the playoffs, and I just don't know if I can bear to see that for 82 games. Like, I think it's going to be a lot of Giannis force feeding. I think it's going to be a lot of stagnant half-court basketball. I just don't envision a crazy successful year for them. And again, this ain't me hating. I don't want people to mistake my tone for hating, but like, I'm not that optimistic in the Bucks. If for some reason I should be, I would love for you to put that in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, share it with me on the socials. Talk to me, Bucks fans, if that's you, because I just don't know. I don't know about this team, man. Giannis going to do what he do. He going to be an MVP candidate. But outside of that, I'm kind of like, what the heck is this? What the heck are we doing? So, yeah, man, we shall see with the Bucks. But for the safe spot, just because Giannis is that dude, I got them 7th. Now, here is where it gets interesting. It gets more interesting in the Eastern Conference. These right here are two teams that I struggle with. The Boston Celtics and the Detroit Pistons. Right now, I have it with the Celtics 6th and the Pistons 5th. But then I think about that. Like, I literally say that out loud, and I'm like, I feel like I should put the Celtics 5th and the Pistons, keep them at 6th. Like, I do think, and I think this is why I go back and forth. The Detroit Pistons have, I think, a more well-rounded roster compared to the Celtics, who still have some holes in their front court. They're not big holes, but they're holes. That said, I do believe the Celtics are better than what people expect them to be without Jason Tatum. And I think it's very similar to what I said about Indy. Opportunity is knocking for guys like Nehemiah Queta, Chris Boucher. I forgot they had got him this offseason. And maybe even guys like Luka Garza, right? He might finally get a chance to show what he can do on a more regular season basis. Jordan Walsh, right? I know they loved him for his defense. We'll see what he can do in the front court. And I'm really excited to see that nucleus of Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, and Ant Simons. Obviously, I think this team is going to take a little bit of a dip defensively, literally because they lost Drew Holiday, and obviously they're going to be without Jason Tatum. But that offense is still pretty solid. I like what the Celtics have. Again, I think it's just how are they going to play without Jason Tatum? Because I think Jaylen Brown is very capable of leading this team to the playoffs and having a really good season. And I think he has that selfless nature about him to where he won't try to do it all by himself. At least I hope. That's the vibe that I get from him. And obviously Peyton Pritchard is a hooper. Derek White, tough shot maker, right? This dude, I mean, he makes all kind of threes. He can defend with the best in the league. Ant Simons is a crazy bucket getter, very streaky. They're going to be high octane, and it's going to be fun. If they can shore up that front court, shore up that defense, and, those guys take advantage of opportunity, Celtics, don't sleep on this team, man. Don't sleep on this team. Just because Tatum ain't out there. Like I said, rather than the Celtics kind of downgrading, or I don't want to use the word tank, right? But rather than the Celtics downgrading and trying to see if they can get a sneaky good draft pick or something like that, or trade somebody here so they can improve when Tatum comes back, I really think they should. I've always been of the notion they should stay put and be ready for when Tatum comes back and be even scarier. That's my thing. So hopefully that's what they do this season. But either way, I have them in that 5-6 range. Like I said, with the Pistons, because again, I think they're gonna show how last year wasn't a fluke, right? Even if I do have them at the sixth spot, say they do get that sixth spot again, I wouldn't consider it a year of regression. I just think they're a team that kind of just stayed the same. We're going to look at how Jaden Ivey comes back, right? He'll be back. So even though they lost Dennis Schroeder, Jaden Ivey's coming back from injury. They added Karis LeVert as a tertiary creator that they lost in Dennis Schroeder. So again, having Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Karis LeVert, those are bigger guards. So I really like that dynamic that they can have together. Their front court is still very strong, literally and figuratively. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed. They still got the hustle guys, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland. They got Javonte Green. That's a sneaky hustle guy that you can throw in spot minutes. But as I've said in prior episodes, my worry with the Detroit Pistons is the shooting. They lost their shooters in Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. And a guard like Cade Cunningham, who has a little bit of that Luka, LeBron effect to him, he needs shooters. And a team with the amount of slashers that they have needs shooters. Jaden Ivey needs shooters. Karis LeVert, he can do both. He's a nice 3-level scorer, but when he drives, he's going to want to kick it out to shooters, right? And they got one in Duncan Robinson. I like that. But I think they'll be essentially asking their other creators to fill that role, right? And don't miss what I'm saying. I think it's just something to have specialized shooters and not guys that are forced to become shooters, right? But then again, that said, they were 17th in shooting last year, in 3-point shooting. They were middle of the pack even with the shooting that they had. So maybe it doesn't make as much of a difference as I think it will, and they'll just generally have a very similar season to last year. Either way, I do see Boston and Detroit kind of fighting for that 5th spot. So I have them 5th and 6th right now. And then we go to another doozy, right? 3-4. We got the Atlanta Hawks and the Orlando Magic. And once again, I am grouping two teams that made some really good improvements in the offseason. I love what both of these teams did this summer. But these are also two teams that struggled with injuries a lot last year that literally broke their season. And with the Hawks, I genuinely believe Trae Young has a chance to be a dark horse MVP candidate off the simple fact that these Atlanta Hawks might be the best constructed Trae Young team since 2021. I said it in the offseason awards show. They got defense, they got shooting, the exact kind of players that Trae Young needs around him. They looked so good when Jalen Johnson was healthy, and I anticipate that they'll look even better with new pieces like Kristaps Porzingis, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Luke Kennard. I think it's the same thing with Orlando, right? Like, you take what they built over the last couple years, and then now you fill some major holes that you had, right? A true point guard in Tyus Jones now, 3-point shooting in Desmond Bane, but also somebody that can score, somebody that can put the ball on the floor, and it's not just limited to 3-point shooting. Like, I think with the Magic, because it's so tough. It's so tough. I keep going back and forth. I really want to give them the edge and give them that 3rd seed because I just like the sureness of what they have, right? You have your wings, you have your defense, you have your all-stars and guys like Paolo and Franz Wagner, and you have, you got the point guard hole, but you got the point guard defense. Like I said, Jalen Suggs is kind of like Alex Caruso in a lot of ways. They got a really deep squad. Jonathan Isaac, you can always put him in limited minutes and let him go off defensively. Wendell Carter does his thing. Goga Bitadze has improved so much the last few years. They got a squad. They really got a squad, and I think some of it just comes down to scoring, but now that they got some 40% 3-point shooters in Tyus Jones and Desmond Bane, Paolo might have a little bit more room to work. Franz might have a little bit more room to work. So I like that. But then even Atlanta, right? Like, Trae Young is that kind of point guard. We've seen it before. We can't act like 2021 didn't happen. We've seen him lead a team to the conference finals before. We've seen good construction around Trae Young work for the Atlanta Hawks, and they got it this year. Like I said, this past season, they looked really good around the NBA Cup. When Jalen Johnson went down, their dreams went down. But, oh boy, with Dyson Daniels, being the great barrier thief, right? You got Zachary Ricochet. He's really nice. Again, these are taller, lanky wings. that you can surround Trey with and guys that can handle the rock. Jalen Johnson, again, like I said, Onyeka Okongwu, Kristaps Porzingis, Nikhil, like that team is good. I'm going to give Orlando the edge, but these teams might be fighting with each other all year long. Like at this point, I don't care who gets that third seed. It's going to be one of them, Atlanta or Orlando, in my opinion. All right, then we get to the top two. And right now I see the second seed going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Interesting team, right? They've been the butt of the joke for the Eastern Conference the last couple seasons. People always expect them to fold in the playoffs. But if you've been paying attention, Donovan Mitchell has been ticked this summer. And I think he is another dark horse MVP candidate for me because this dude is coming off a playoff disappointment that still had him tight-lipped in an interview with Taylor Rooks. And yet again, I think not being able to come out of the second round, despite being a 1 seed in the regular season, like these are things Donovan Mitchell has been through, and it's really got him upset. Like the minute they lost versus Indiana, he started his mission to come back better. He was telling the media, you guys aren't going to pick us. Nothing is going to matter this year until we get to the playoffs and show people that we are legit. Like even then, even in the press conference booth, he was already thinking like, we got to get through the next 82 games and get right back to this spot and show people we can do it. He has that kind of fire, and I'm excited to see what it looks like this year. And even then, that's not all. It ain't just Donovan Mitchell either. Apparently, Evan Mobley been on the Mike Bibby workout plan regimen, and he looks ready to build on the All-Star campaign he had by being a stronger force inside. And I've criticized Jared Allen and Evan Mobley for that. Like, as good as they are and as athletic as they can be compared to their stronger counterparts, they're not as good on the rebounds when they face bigger centers inside. And so Evan Mobley putting on some muscle this summer is kind of like, he's really ready to take that leap even more, right? And I think with one of my favorite acquisitions of the summer, they get Lonzo Ball. High IQ, versatile defender, pickpocket, intelligent passer. Many people envision him to have a similar impact to what Alex Caruso did with the Thunder, right? Especially defensively. But again, Lonzo Ball is a very high IQ player, makes the right plays on both ends of the floor. Like, he is the exact kind of player that can help push them over the edge. I really believe that. And I think with Max Strus missing the first few months with injury, Lonzo Ball is going to get plenty of minutes at the small forward spot. I really believe that wholeheartedly. He's going to be able to play with Garland and Mitchell because he's 6'6" and he can guard multiple positions. But I also think, of course, he is going to play that traditional point guard role when Garland sits, right? It's going to be a big year for DeAndre Hunter, right? We got to see if he can fill the role that we expected him to fill. Like, I know for me, I was high on that DeAndre Hunter trade, and he didn't have a great playoff series. So I want to see what he does. I really want to see what he does, and hopefully he can improve and find a bit more footing in what the Cavaliers have. But again, as crazy as it might sound, these qualities give me hope for Cleveland. I'm not trying to be the butt of the joke with them. I understand, they got some stuff to prove. They got some stuff to prove, right? Darius Garland is going to have to be a much better playoff performer. He's got to stay healthy. Like I said, we know what Donovan Mitchell is going to do, but we got other guys need to pull their weight. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how much they can take a leap. I think they'll be very successful compared to last season. I think they'll have a very successful year, getting that second spot in the East. But again, I think with many East teams looking at this conference as wide open, I think the Cavaliers are going to get a little bit more of people's best fight. And, I don't really see them getting that 1 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but, I gave the edge to the New York Knicks, which is funny though, right? Because that's all I've been thinking about. Like, I didn't want to do it, if I'm being honest. I didn't want to give the Knicks the first seed in the Eastern Conference. It sounds too good for the New York Knicks to be a 1 seed, right? That hasn't happened since 92, 93. I wasn't even born. I wasn't even thought of. But if they could do that in Jordan's NBA, they could surely do it now, right? And like I said in my shout out to 19 teammate, friend of the show, Mike Steph, when I was on his show, I was telling him, as a Knicks, he's a Knicks fan, and I was telling him, like, the New York Knicks, this is the season where, watch, they're going to do everything that they're supposed to do. They're going to get the 1 seed. They're going to make the NBA Finals, and people are going to kill them for it because Tyrese Halliburton ain't out here. Jason Tatum ain't out here, right? So I really do see that being this kind of season for the New York Knicks. Like I said, as the Eastern Conference runner up, they should absolutely deserve to be here. They have what it takes to be a one seed in the Eastern Conference. But my thing is, sometimes the New York Knicks like to keep teams around. And in Madison Square Garden, they get everybody's best game. So sometimes they gonna drop a game to the Utah Jazz or whoever because off the fact that they're in MSG. But, they got Mike Brown now. Solid track record. We know this. Comes from the Popovich tree. He won with the Warriors. He coached guys like LeBron and Kobe. He helped Sacramento return to the playoffs after a 15, 16-year drought, right? They've kept their roster for the most part, and they added a necessary bench scorer in Jordan Clarkson. They added a nice role player in Gershon Yabusele, right? I went over those acquisitions in the offseason episode. I think the main thing for the New York Knicks, if they can tighten up those defensive rotations, and more specifically, I think down the stretch of games, if it's less hero ball from Jalen Brunson and even Karl Anthony Towns on some occasions, I think they can be much better off. I think there should be no reason why they cannot duplicate last year's success, even into the playoffs. Like, if I'm the New York Knicks, the goal is to make the NBA Finals this year. We'll see what it looks like, right? We'll see if they're given championship vibes, but I think they have what it takes. I just think they're, like I said, big things they got to clean up is defensive rotations and that hero ball. Again, that hero ball got Jalen Brunson Clutch Player of the Year, but there were some moments where it was like, okay, Mikal Bridges was getting good looks in the mid-range throughout the game, but now he's just not even touching the basketball in the fourth quarter, right? OG Anunoby is trying to find his footing after not touching the ball, right? Like, and then it just kind of creates some dysfunction, and I think it takes some of the players out the game. So, like I said, they clean up some of that stuff, and we'll see if the Knicks can do it. We'll see if the Knicks can do it. But I gave them they love, I gave them they respect, and I have them sitting number one in the Eastern Conference this year. I really do. I really do. They'll be fighting with Cleveland, but I gave them they love. I gave them they love. So those are my East standings. All right. To recap once again, I got the Brooklyn Nets at 15, the Washington Wizards at 14, Chicago Bulls 13, Charlotte Hornets 12, Toronto Raptors 11, 10th Indiana Pacers, 9th Philadelphia 76ers, 8 Miami Heat, 7 Milwaukee Bucks, 6 Boston Celtics slash Pistons, 5th Pistons slash Celtics, 4th Atlanta Hawks, 3 Orlando Magic, 2 Cleveland Cavaliers, and number 1, the New York Knicks. So the Eastern Conference ain't that bad, man. It'll still be an exciting race to see who takes advantage of the parity that we're probably going to see. But now it's time to head to the Wild West. The Wild Wild West, because it truly lives up to its name, and this had me stressing. I got to be 100% honest with you. In a stat conference, even quality teams are going to miss the playoffs. So I can't keep everybody happy, but as of today, like I said, as of today, here's what I settled with. The Utah Jazz at 15, the New Orleans Pelicans at 14, the Sacramento Kings at 13, the Portland Trailblazers at 12, the Phoenix Suns at 11, the Dallas Mavericks at 10, the Memphis Grizzlies at 9, the Golden State Warriors at 8, the Los Angeles Lakers at 7, the Minnesota Timberwolves at 6, the Los Angeles Clippers at 5, the San Antonio Spurs at 4, the Houston Rockets at 3, the Denver Nuggets at 2, and the Oklahoma City Thunder at 1. All right, starting with the Utah Jazz. Look, man, they may be dead last in the West, and call me crazy, but the Jazz got some nice young pieces. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Collier, who, again, I said in a previous episode, I envision him as Kyle Lowry. He's got a little bit of John Wall tendencies in there too, but I see him as like Kyle Lowry, a little bit more of an old school floor general in that sense. Likes putting his imprint on the game, but at the same time, knows how to get his teammates involved. I think Keontae George is nice. Kyle Flipowski, right? This is a guy that showed nice flashes of what he can be. I think he has good feel for the game as a face-up big. Getting Ace Bailey, right? It might have been risky at first, but hopefully he can turn into that prototypical big wing that we started to see more of the last few years. I know they're counting on him to develop into that kind of guy. We got Walter Clayton, right, who looks to be a steal, as we saw how in the NCAA tournament, right? We saw how he impacts the game in terms of winning basketball, and they need that, right? Boy, do the Jazz need those kind of players that are just going to do what it takes to win. Furthermore, I always loved KJ Martin, man, and I'm hoping that he can finally find a home and pretty much give some of what they lost in John Collins, right? An athletic finisher, a lob threat, that sort of player. Of course, Lauri Markkanen, he been flat out hooping in this Eurobasket, man, and hopefully he's gonna return to All-Star form. And they got some friendly faces. George Niang is back with the team. Walker Kessler once again dug trade rumors. As a kind of highly touted rim protector. They got a nice vet in Kevin Love. Like, this team has some players to work with. Again, not a playoff team. They won't win that many games, but there is definitely a future that is forming there, right? Like, again, very sleeper league pass team, I think, is the Utah Jazz. If you just kind of want to evaluate and see what are the young pieces that they got that they're working with, I consider them a sleeper league pass team. But again, in this stacked West, I got them dead last. That brings us to 14, the New Orleans Pelicans. Again, very young team, but they also have some exciting pieces. But they got a lot of raw exciting pieces. Like, I think it's just hard for me to put them a bit higher because I'm just not convinced that this will be a cohesive team as much as it will be a talented team. I think, like I said, Jordan Poole, they're still waiting on DeJounte Murray to come back. They drafted Jeremiah Fears. They traded for Derek Queen in this draft. Still got Yves Missy, Trey Murphy. They got Herb Jones is still on this team, right? Like, they got a lot of nice pieces, but I think now it's about how is it all going to mesh, because this is a very talented team. And of course, right, like, the big elephant in the room is Zion Williamson's health, right? This is a big factor. This team as a whole got hit with the injury bug bad last year. And Zion Williamson just continues. Again, him and LaMelo Ball are really in the same boat in that regard for their teams. It just seems like the success of these teams relies on the health of their stars. And as long as these young stars aren't healthy, it's not manifesting into anything special, right? So health to me is everything with the Pelicans. And if healthy, they may not be this bad, right? They may be a little bit closer to the play-in race, but unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. They've had a lot of injury struggles and they're waiting on guys to come back. Hopefully, for their sake, I'm wrong and they can really push through. Like I've said before, if they can conserve Zion like the Clippers conserve Kawhi Leonard, that would probably be better off for them. But we'll see. It's a lot of young talent that I'm just not convinced is ready to play winning basketball. But again, they could prove me wrong and everything like that. But I think they have a lot of young talent and they have a lot of tradable talent. So something tells me that the Pelicans are still going to be on the outside looking in. And again, in a stacked Western Conference, that doesn't surprise me. And then that brings me to the Sacramento Kings at 13. Honestly, I've had this team all over the place. I settled on 13 because it was kind of middle of the pack in terms of what I was thinking. Like, in some ways, I wanted to switch them with the Pelicans, but obviously they have the star power, right? They have Zach LaVine, they have DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis. They picked up Dennis Schroeder. They got some. They even got Drew Eubanks, right? They kind of shored up some of their front court. Rumor has it that that there might be a lane for them to get Russell Westbrook. So in some ways, I'm like, okay, maybe they won't be that bad. And then I wanted to put them 12th, right? If you notice, I have the Blazers better than the Sacramento Kings. And part of me even wanted to switch that last minute, but I'm like, I don't like what this team is doing. If I'm being honest, I do like them hiring Scott Perry as a GM, but I'm just not thrilled about this team. I don't like it. I don't like it. So I just settled with them at 13. I'd be very surprised if they push for the play-in. I just don't think that they have a sustainable roster. From the De'Aaron Fox trade to firing Mike Brown, although Doug Christie has done well in his role, shout out to him, to reuniting Zach LaVine with DeMar DeRozan, like, I don't think that's the ideal mix that you want to have, right? I just really want them to blow this team up, in all honesty. Like, I think Domantas Sabonis deserves a better roster around him with less isolation scores, as long as Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Malik Monk are on the team. DeMar DeRozan, he should probably be in Memphis right now. I've been saying that all summer. Zach LaVine, I think he could have been in Denver, Detroit, maybe even Milwaukee by now. And somehow Malik Monk, like I said, Malik Monk has little value on the trade market despite having his best season as a pro. Like, I don't know what's up with this team. On paper, they got talent. They truly do. But I just don't think it's the best mix of basketball, man. And that's why they lose games. That's why they lose games. To me, it's definitely not a long-term situation. And so kind of my brain is like, if they explore a rebuild, maybe at the trade deadline and really just tank, that's why I kind of have them here. But I really suspect that at some point this season they're just going to shift their focus, because I don't think this is sustainable. I really don't. I don't know what the Kings are doing, so I have them 13th. I don't want to talk about them any longer. Let's go 12th to the Portland Trailblazers. Again, I think my main thought process with this is that while the Sacramento Kings have more star power, I think the Blazers have actual pieces to build around. If they can continue to ascend within this next season or two, they can creep into that play-in race, and maybe even better. I think they can be that good. I love what they have. I love, again, I've been saying it this summer. Big season ahead for Scoot Henderson. Big season ahead for Shaedon Sharpe. These guys right here are going to have to show that they can be franchise cornerstones, right? Obviously, Hanson Yang, right? We're going to see how he does and who's going to win that position battle, right? Because do you go defense with Donovan Clingan, or do you go like, yo, we pretty much got the next Nikola Jokic right here. Like, we got to give Hanson Yang the keys. Because even then, that's going to change things. And even when Damian Lillard comes back, right? Like, it's a lot going on. And then they have a ton of defense, right? Toumani Camara, like I said, Donovan Clingan in the interior. Robert Williams is still on this team for the time being. He's an interior defender. Matisse Thybulle should be getting minutes again, right? Drew Holiday they just picked up. I'm excited. I think the Blazers, like I said, I would be surprised if the Portland Trail Blazers are better than the Sacramento Kings. I really like the Blazers. Kind of how I feel about the Toronto Raptors is how I feel about the Portland Trail Blazers. I'll put it that way. I think it's more so about kind of post Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday, right? Like, you have to foster those things now, so as those guys get older and they eventually retire, you're still in great shape. I think that's what this is with the Portland Trail Blazers. Again, unfortunately, don't see them in the play-in this season, but I think just like this past season, they're going to have their flashes where they might beat some good teams, and we're going to be like, oh, shoot, the Blazers are brewing something over there. So I like them. All right, so now we get into the good part, though, right? Like, again, funny enough, we're at the 11th seed in the West, and this is the good part. That's how stacked the West is. But again, I have the Phoenix Suns right here. I'm actually shocked that the Phoenix Suns kept Jalen Green, and they are presumably going to let Devin Booker run the show again. And this is the thing. That is not a bad idea. I want to make it clear. It's not that Devin Booker can't play the combo guard. He actually does really well in that role. But when it's time to be Devin Booker, is he going to cling to the combo guard role still? And I think that was his critique from the previous season. There were some games where you watch Devin Booker and it's like he probably should have kept his foot on the gas. But again, having Kevin Durant and knowing that, he just doesn't want to take all the shots and, he still wants to do his job as the quote unquote point guard. He didn't want to mess nothing up. But it's like, again, Devin Booker's best seasons was when he had a point guard, again, like Chris Paul. So for him to go back to have another season with a combo guard, and then not only that, but playing with Jalen Green, again, it's very similar to what they had with Kevin Durant in the sense that you got two hoopers, but who is going to orchestrate? Who is going to be the floor general, right? These guys are scorers. And this is always what I mean when I say, we kind of overuse the term positionless basketball, because there should still be some kind of structure here. Right? Devin Booker at his core is a scorer. Jalen Green at his core is definitely a scorer. Putting them on the floor at the same time with presumably is going to be Dylan Brooks, maybe Ryan Dunn, and then like Nick Richards / Mark Williams / Kaman Malawach. Like, I don't know, man. Like I say, great scorers need somebody to set the table. And you're asking Devin Booker to do both of those for another season with another scorer that not only isn't the most efficient scorer, but just still has room to grow in terms of what he looks like as a winning player. And that's why I have the Phoenix Suns this low. Again, like I said, similar to the Pelicans, I worry about the cohesion on the court. Like I said, there are going to be plenty of games where Devin Booker cannot afford to defer to his teammates. He's got to make the big plays. And when you look at it, and again, I don't want to sound like a hater because they actually have a solid roster. And this is a pretty big team. More than half their players are at least 6'6". I think there is certainly sleeper potential with this team. Don't get me wrong. They got some nice wings over there. But I do have them just outside the play-in because I'm just not sure about that offensive cohesion. Devin Booker, who knows? He might go crazy. He might return to being an all-star again, but I don't think it's going to be sexy basketball. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Phoenix. They got some pieces, but I don't see it working that well. 10th, I got the Dallas Mavericks. And yes, even without Kyrie Irving, I have the Dallas Mavericks at the 10th seed, pretty much exactly where they were this past season. As wild as it may seem, I think they can snag that final play-in spot out west. Again, much of that is going to be based on the durability of Anthony Davis, who obviously we know can still hoop at an all-NBA level. But if he misses too much time, Phoenix might be able to sneak in, right? But if all goes well, retaining Daniel Gafford was huge for them, right? Like they still got a lot of these dudes from the 2024 finals run. They retained Daniel Gafford. They still got Derek Lively, right? So Anthony Davis doesn't have to play the 5 full time. They even got on the other end of the spectrum, they got sleeper guys like Jaden Hardy, Brandon Williams. These are guys who aren't shy about getting buckets, and they're going to need that with Kyrie Irving out for most of the season. And then, of course, they got Cooper Flagg, the number 1 pick. So, like, the Dallas Mavericks are still very much a good team. I love how Max Christie has blended with this team. I love, like I said, I always was a fan of PJ Washington. Najee Marshall played good minutes for them. Like, this is a good team still. This is obviously, oh my gosh, how could I forget Klay Thompson, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? He went back with the John B look, so, he's going to be feeling himself. Uh, I think this is still very much a good team that can play good basketball as long as they're healthy. And what I love specifically about Cooper Flagg is his versatility. This is the year where he can show what he can do a little bit because Kyrie's not going to be out there. But at the same time, again, they got D'Angelo Russell now as well. That's another name I forgot to mention. This is going to allow Cooper Flagg to also prepare to eventually be a connecting piece between the point guard and then the big man in Anthony Davis. So once he gets comfortable, he should help keep Dallas afloat in this tight Western Conference. Like Cooper Flagg is going to be able to pick and choose. In a perfect world, I think he's going to be able to pick and choose when he scores, when he's aggressive, but at the same time, when he's focused on making the right plays, the winning plays, playing selfless basketball, getting stops on defense. That's what I'm excited to see from him. Specifically. So, and that's the thing too. If the next 2 teams I discussed slow down, I wouldn't even sleep on Dallas potentially being an 8th seed. Like I really like their supporting cast, but as of now, I have them 10th because the 8th and 9th one is a doozy between the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, as I see it now, I have Grizzlies at 9 and Warriors at 8. But even then, I'm still flip-flopping on these 2 teams as I speak because to think a healthy Grizzlies team won't have a chance at a playoff spot is just silly. But the question is, how many Western Conference teams are they better than? And look, I like the KCP pickup. I like the Cedric Howard draft pick. The Ty Jerome pickup can be really good. Obviously, he'll be playing more shooting guard minutes, I think, alongside Ja or Scottie Pippen Jr. If healthy, this team can be a playoff team, legit. Not play-in, but a playoff team. But where I have my doubt is that I don't think this team got better after the offseason. I think they're about the same. I think losing Luke Kennard and getting KCP, who, don't get me wrong, is much better defensively, but at the end of the day, you lost a shooter and got a shooter. They trade Desmond Bane and they get Ty Jerome. That's technically a downgrade, a good downgrade, but on paper, a downgrade. Ty Jerome is a fine player, had a very efficient season last year. Excellent year coming back from the injury, but still not the 18 to 20 point per game scorer that Desmond Bane showed to be. And I still see similar things happening in the playoffs. Unless Ja Morant is going crazy, it may be hard to create offense. We'll see what Gigi Jackson can do with a fresh 3rd season, right? Again, he had the injury last year, so he was coming back from the injury, so he didn't have it all the way together. We'll see if Zach Edey can give them a true low post dynamic, which again is going to help them figure out how they want to attack the half court in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. The Grizzlies have a really good core, but I don't know if it's as good as Minnesota. I don't even know if it's as good as the Spurs, right? Like I still, for some reason, I just can't shake my doubt with the Memphis Grizzlies. Good team, but they still got some stuff to show. Now, as for the Warriors, everything that happened after February 8th, 2025 gives me every reason to put the Warriors as a top 5 team out west. Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond looked exactly how I expected them to, and it literally turned their season around. However, this team had a very difficult time generating offense when Stephen Curry was not on the floor and Jimmy Butler wasn't in attack mode. That is the only reason why I have them on the lower end of the seeding. The Warriors look like a totally different team when their role players specifically find themselves trying to fill responsibilities meant for the stars. And they are having a tough time filling out their roster at the time of this recording. Okay, they don't know what they're doing with Jonathan Kuminga just yet. They still seem to be waiting on Al Horford, who's taking his time. And even then, if they get those two guys, they still need to complete their roster as we get closer to the new season. So if they can lock these guys in, or even with Kuminga, do a sign and trade type of deal, and then still maybe bring in Seth Curry, right? Or even Malik Beasley. Get some shooters that fit the Golden State Warriors system. I know they've been linked to Malcolm Brogdon. That would be a great ball handler to have in that second unit, right? And doesn't have to play a lot of minutes. So, you can kind of conserve him in that way. And shoot, a name I saw on the available free agents, Charles Bassey wouldn't be a good sleeper. That wouldn't be a bad idea as a sleeper pickup for another front court player. Like, if they can get guys like this to help out the second unit, I would feel much better about this team. But if they strike out, they will once again be relying on their effective yet older stars to carry them to the playoffs. And those dudes ain't trying to do that. Like, again, that told me everything. When you watch the series versus the Timberwolves, there was that game Jimmy Butler was saying in the post game, like, man, I miss Steph Curry. Like, Jimmy Butler does not want to carry a team no more. Like, this team it really thrives off Steph Curry and that Warrior system, and they got to get guys in here that are truly going to want to buy into that. And so, like I said, if they say in a perfect world they get all those guys that I mentioned, I would much rather have them like 6th, 5th seed in the West. But right now, I think they'll be fighting for the play-in again, because I just think that's a lot of responsibility on Steph, a lot of responsibility on Jimmy Butler that I don't know if they want to do for 82 games and the playoffs. But, I could be wrong. We'll see. They still got some moves to make, so we'll see. All right, getting to the nitty-gritty, we got the 7th spot with the Los Angeles Lakers. Though I was initially high on the pairing of Luka Doncic and LeBron James, and as I am anxious to see how DeAndre Ayton approaches his role with a historic franchise. I'm rooting for a Marcus Smart resurgence. And of course, Austin Reeves is ready to be that emergency all-star when they need him the most. I look at this Lakers roster and I say, maybe 7 seed, 6 seed. Nothing really stands out. Like, I don't see anything special about this team, nor do I see anything super concerning. Will there be flaws? Absolutely. Will there be highlights? Definitely. But I know this, JJ Redick's rotations should definitely not be as limited as they were down the stretch of the past season. Okay, now you got DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes. You lose Dorian Finney-Smith, but you get Marcus Smart, who smaller version, right? Like, you lose some defense, but you gain some defense. So, like I said, I don't see anything special. I don't see anything drastic. I just, that's pretty much why I have them 7th. I think they'll obviously, like I said, they'll play some good basketball, and there'll be some times where you'll watch them play and they'll make your butt itch. But, I think they can get that 7th seed. I think they can get that 7th seed just for safety. I don't have much to say about them, to be honest. We'll see what a full season of LeBron and Luka looks like, and how things shape up, and obviously the acquisitions that they got in the summer are going to have to fall in line, and we'll see how JJ Redick uses those guys. But yeah, right now I have them at 7. At 6, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, another interesting team. Western Conference runner-up once again. Still have many of their core pieces. I was very impressed and really relieved at how well Julius Randle and Ant Edwards played together. I thought that was tremendous maturity out of both of those guys. But honestly, who I'm waiting on is Rob Dillingham. He is the exact player they needed versus the OKC Thunder, yet they didn't have the confidence to put him in. And I get it, right? Like, it pains me to say this, but his archetype is becoming a lot more rare nowadays. I hate it. Like I always say, I just miss when the game was about the game. You know, when the league was just about whether or not you could hoop. And you know, one thing that kid knows how to do is score. That's the name of the game. And especially with Mike Conley getting older, the T-Wolves will need a guard that is going to put some pressure on the defense. And for me, Rob is that guy. I want to see more of him this year, and hopefully he can stay healthy. And, you know, I don't anticipate the T-Wolves making their third consecutive conference finals. Again, even with the same roster for the most part. But I do see them as a very good team out west, still a tough team to play against and things of that nature. But I just don't see them as good as these next teams I'm about to list. Next up, Los Angeles Clippers as the 5th seed. It's funny, right? Every year people say, y'all believe in the Clippers every year and they keep selling. Why y'all keep picking the Clippers when they don't do nothing in the playoffs? But I think that's actually a credit to the front office consistently finding a way to build a good team that you want to believe in, that they've been doing this for the past 5, 6, 7 years. And with that in mind, the only reason I have the Clippers 5th and not top 4 is due to health. Ty Lue continues to hint that while Kawhi Leonard wants to play back-to-backs again, they want to save him from himself and continue to conserve him until the playoffs, right? You couple that with Brad Beal. Again, he ain't always the healthiest brother in the bunch. So you got to presume that they're going to drop some games just off not having a healthy squad some nights. But nonetheless, Ivica Zubac has a more than respectable backup in Brook Lopez this year. He finally got a backup, right? John Collins is in the mix. CP3 is back. You darn right I believe in the LA Clippers again. Yeah, call me crazy. Like, I'm going to put my LA Clippers hat on this year once again. You know what I mean? Like, I believe in them again. Like, I think the defense is still going to be there. The offense might be even better. And the extra rim protection is there with Lopez. And I think not only did the Clippers keep most of their core, but they successfully filled the holes that were exposed in the playoffs. I think they are top 5 in the Western Conference for sure. It's just the injuries that might slow them down. But I think they definitely have it in them. I'm excited to see how they play this year. But 4th, which might be my biggest surprise in this whole episode, I have the San Antonio Spurs. I know that might look crazy. I'm aware of that. I know. I've seen people put this team as low as the 9th seed and as high as about where I have them right now. They're that kind of team. But for me, this is a team that plays hard, right? This is a team where these brothers can hoop. Devin Vassell be doing his thing. And I think that's a guy who can start and come off the bench, right? Keldon Johnson, same thing. He brings so much energy. And we can't act like Carter Bryant won't bring that same, menace level defensive tenacity to this team, or that Dylan Harper, whether he starts or comes off the bench, won't translate to what the Spurs have, right? Stephon Castle only got better as the year progressed. And it is another guy that no matter how he's used is going to find a way to impact the basketball game. And shoot, they even picked up Kelly Olynyk as a stretch big. They got Luke Cornett as another interior presence who's nearly as tall as Wemby. Like, there are only 3 players on this roster under 6'5". Like, this team is built to bring versatility on both ends of the floor. And I said it last year with the Clippers, especially in today's league. It is not always about establishing a team full of exciting players. It's becoming cool again to just get you some junkyard dogs and then have 1 or 2 stars. And the Spurs have that. You can't say that the Spurs don't have that. Even in the event that they don't do as well as I'm predicting, I still see them making the playoffs this year. I think they can be that good. But my big point is that I also believe a lot of fans are completely undervaluing De'Aaron Fox. I understand he didn't play as well once he got traded. I understand that he isn't the passer that you probably want him to be. But he's been among the better scorers at his position the past 5 seasons or so. And with a team filled with scrappy role players and impact players, they will need his half-court creativity in the playoffs. Trust when I tell you. And don't get me started on how much he fits with guys like Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson in the open court. And lastly, of course, if Wemby is due to have the MVP-esque season we've been anxious for him to have, if he's the MVP that everybody thinks he's about to become, it should certainly put the Spurs on a whole nother level. It might sound crazy right now, but I'm a believer in the San Antonio Spurs this year. I believe the Spurs are all in on what they want their future to look like. At this point, it's about the development, right? The rookies are going to take their L's. They're going to have their learning experiences. This isn't a perfect team, but a top 5 seed in the West for this season, I don't think that's a bad start at all. I think that is a very doable outcome for the San Antonio Spurs, especially if Wemby is really out here on his otherworldly-esque basketball, right? Like if he can have that Giannis impact where it's just like stuffing the stat sheet, leading his team to victories, I think the Spurs got it. I think they got the defense. I think, with Fox and Wemby as their main offensive go-to players, oh yeah, I like what I see. I think they can be that team. Every year we see a team kind of pole vault up the standings. I think this season, in the 2025-26 NBA season, that team is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. All right, and then we got the 2nd and 3rd seed. Okay, so for me, it's between the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets, obviously. At the time of this recording, again, I've been going back and forth with these two all day, but I decided on Rockets at 3 and Nuggets at number 2, because I love the amount of versatility that the Houston Rockets have, yet I love the way the Nuggets have improved with pretty much the most ideal pieces they needed heading into the offseason. Very similar to how I feel about the Clippers in San Antonio is how I feel about Houston. You get the explosiveness of Amen Thompson with the buckets of Kevin Durant and just so many different lineup combinations that Ime Udoka can roll with. On the flip side, Joker, he has a better backup in Valanciunas, and in shooting, you get Cam Johnson and Tim Hardaway Jr., and then they bring back Bruce Brown, right? You lose Russell Westbrook, but you do bring back a familiar face in Bruce Brown, and essentially you're keeping the team that nearly defeated the eventual champion OKC Thunder. So again, like I said, I can go back and forth all day. I do want to give the Nuggets the edge for just being the better team of the two, but the Rockets won't be that far off, right? Just because I use the word better don't mean that's a big difference. I think the Rockets, with their defensive versatility, they can throw different bodies at Jokic. They can throw different bodies at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, different switchable bodies on the perimeter, right? Different, even on the interior, right? You have Clint Capella, Steven Adams, and Alperen Sengun now. So you can divvy that up however you wish. I think the main thing that I've been saying this summer is that if the Houston Rockets can improve their spot up shooting, they can be even better this year. And again, you anticipate that picking up Kevin Durant, right? We'll see how Reed Shepherd does with more minutes this year. Yeah, they got some pieces. Obviously, getting Dorian Finney-Smith, he's going to be knocking down some spot up shots. So yeah, the Rockets should be better this year. But I think the Nuggets too, especially if that shooting can prevent teams from doubling Jokic, it should open up the game even more for those guys. So again, I can go back and forth with the yin and yang of these two teams, but right now I lean towards Denver. I'm gonna give them the edge just off some kind of more established, having a more established core, more team chemistry, I think. But yeah, these two teams, I have them 2nd and 3rd. But of course, that's the final spot. It goes to the defending champs. Number 1 in the West, once again, OKC Thunder. We haven't seen a team go back-to-back since the 2018 Warriors. And while it will be very tough in a league with so much parity, they got a chance to do it again. Like I said, my big thing with OKC this season is this. They cannot go into this season, and especially the playoffs, thinking that they can win the same way that they did this past season. And I know I said that, and I got some comments on the socials of like, oh, yeah, it's like I feel like people were like waving me off, right? Like, Des, I see what you're saying, but nah, man. OKC, they won, they got it. Like, this team is good. But I'm like, I don't know. If you look at some of them games towards the end of their playoff run, there were some, especially like semifinals, conference finals, NBA finals. There were some games OKC, they was tripping a little bit. They ran into some problems. And I predicted that. As much as they were my pick for the finals last year, I said that they are not immune to running into trouble. And they did that, right? I think Shea was humbled a little bit. I think J-Dub was humbled a little bit. I think Chet was humbled a little bit. I think their bench was humbled a little bit on some occasions. It wasn't always smooth sailing domination from this team. And that's where I think Nikola Topic comes in. He's going to have to show pretty quickly that he can alleviate some of those ball handling responsibilities from Shea. And I think even the rookie Thomas Sorber, right? At some point, he's going to have to show that he's capable of filling in when Chet and Hartenstein are struggling, but they don't want to play small ball, right? So they'll throw Thomas Sorber in there so they can still have a big man. And obviously, Chet had some injuries. Isaiah had some injuries, so Thomas Sorber is going to get a chance to show what he can do as well. And again, it was a good pickup so OKC could still have some size in the paint. This team is still young. The defense is still going to be there. We'll see if Chet can improve. I think he'll improve coming off the championship run. I think J-Dub is going to have a lot more confidence in bouncing his step even more after the championship. Shea is going to be absolutely great. We all know this. This team is going to be great again. But again, the big thing I want to see from OKC is, can they clean up some of that sloppy basketball we occasionally saw in the later rounds of the postseason? Again, no team is perfect, and just because you won the championship don't mean you're not going to have any flaws the next season, right? There's still going to be some things to clean up, especially when you got that target on your back. So, yeah, there's still some things to clean up from OKC, but again, I think they're going to have the best record in the league again, and they should definitely put themselves in a position to win another championship for sure. But again, it's going to be tough. But that's my standings for the West. So, again, just to recap the West, I settled on the Utah Jazz at 15, the New Orleans Pelicans at 14, the Sacramento Kings at 13, the Portland Trail Blazers at 12, the Phoenix Suns at 11, the Dallas Mavericks at 10, the Memphis Grizzlies at 9, the Golden State Warriors at 8, the Los Angeles Lakers at 7, the Minnesota Timberwolves at 6, the Los Angeles Clippers at 5, the San Antonio Spurs at 4, the Houston Rockets at 3, the Denver Nuggets at number 2, and the OKC Thunder at the number 1 seed. So yes, those are my NBA standings predictions for the upcoming season. I know there were some doozies in there. I don't expect to shoot 100% from the field with this. It was just something fun to do going into as we get closer to the preseason and whatnot. But with that, we've made it to the end of another Hip to the Games episode, man. Again, we just went through my tall task of giving you my NBA standings predictions. And while I'm certain I didn't shoot 100%, I am certain that we will see yet another entertaining and competitive race to the NBA Finals this season. But as always, these were just my thoughts. So now it's time to hear from you. You can tweet the show at Hip to the Games or tag me directly on Twitter and IG at Desmond Powell _ to share your thoughts on any of the teams discussed and predictions made. You already know my rule. My only rule is that we keep it respectful as we agree or disagree, but that door is always open. Let's have some respectful conversations and whatnot. But of course, I want to simply say thank you for listening to another episode of H2DG, all for the love of the best combo there is. And of course, a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.